8 songs, 8 artists who touched the charts exactly once. And by the time we get to number 1, you're going to understand why one of them still gets sampled, spoofed, and rediscovered more than 50 years later. 1973 was one of the deepest years soul music ever had. Stevie Wonder had 3 #1 records. Marvin Gaye owned The Summer. Gladys Knight took a midnight train straight to the top of the charts. But underneath all of that, something else was happening. Regular people, teenagers, session singers, a studio owner's side project, walked into a booth, cut one record, and vanished from the charts forever. Some of them were children. One of them was 11 years old, and the story behind our #1 pick involves a comedy duo, a parody song, and a chart battle that most people have never heard about. Let's start the countdown. Number 8, Armed and Extremely Dangerous by First Choice. Philadelphia, 1973. Sigma Sound Studios, the same building that, within a year or two, would become ground zero for the entire Philadelphia soul sound. Producers Norman Harris, Ronald Tyson, and Alan Felder were building something in that room that would eventually influence disco itself. And into that room walked 3 women, Rochelle Fleming, Annette Guest, and Joyce Jones. Their voices weren't polished in the way a lot of 1973 soul was. They were sharper, more aggressive, built for a dance floor that didn't fully exist yet in America. Disco as a genre was still a few years away from having a name. Armed and Extremely Dangerous wasn't a warning shot. It was a flex. The lyrics turned heartbreak into a weapon, "I'm gonna get you," delivered like a threat, and a promise in the same breath. There's a tension in the vocal performance that most 1973 radio simply didn't have. A coiled, ready-to-strike energy that came 2 years too early for the sound it would eventually help define. It crossed over. It hit the pop charts. It hit the R&B charts. And First Choice kept recording after this. They'd go on to become a real presence on dance floors once disco fully arrived, with club records that still get spun today. So if we're being strict about it, this isn't a pure one-hit wonder in the technical sense. But here's the test we're using for this whole list. Ask anyone under 50 to name a First Choice song. This is the only one they'll get. Sometimes one record eclipses an entire catalog so completely that the catalog might as well not exist. That's exactly what happened here, and it's why First Choice earns a spot on this list even with an asterisk next to their name. Number 7, Leaving Me in So Much Pain by The Independents. Chicago, a vocal group that came together almost by accident, built around 2 names you've probably heard before, in completely different contexts. Songwriter Chuck Jackson, not the famous soul singer Chuck Jackson, a different one entirely, easy to confuse, and Marvin Yancey, who would go on to co-write some of Natalie Cole's biggest hits just a few years later. This record did one thing, exactly once, in its entire chart life. It climbed into the top 40 in 1973. Nothing before it in the group's catalog had charted that high. Nothing after it ever would again. One shot, one result. But don't mistake one hit for simple. Listen to what's actually happening underneath the vocal. The harmonies are layered on top of each other, almost like scaffolding, each voice holding up the next, while the lead vocal sounds like it's genuinely straining under the weight of the lyric. This isn't a group phoning in a sad song. This is heartbreak turned into architecture, built piece by piece until the whole structure is groaning under its own emotional weight. And then, just like that, it was over. The group's next single barely limped into the lower half of the charts, and the Independents quietly became one of those names that only comes up in conversations exactly like this one, a footnote to a single, perfect moment. Number 6. Natural High by Bloodstone. Unlike a lot of vocal groups in this era, who relied entirely on outside songwriters and to London, chasing a record deal that America wasn't offering them, it took leaving the country entirely before they find. Number 5. Pillow Talk by Sylvia. Here's where the story gets genuinely fascinating. Sylvia Robinson had already been a one-hit wonder once before. 16 years earlier, in 1957, as half of the duo Mickey and Sylvia, with the hit Love is Strange. Most performers never get one moment like that in a lifetime. Sylvia was about to do it twice, 16 years apart, in two completely different eras of popular music. Pillow Talk was intimate in a way American radio genuinely wasn't ready for. Whispered vocals, right up against the microphone. A slow, deliberate groove built specifically for late-night listening when nobody else is around. And here's a detail that makes the story even better. This song was reportedly written with Al Green in mind first. Green turned it down. The lyrical content was considered too suggestive for the gospel-rooted image he was building at the time. So Sylvia recorded it herself, and it became hers completely. It went on to become her only solo pop hit. But here's the twist that almost nobody connects to this song. Sylvia went on to found Sugar Hill Records, the label that released Rapper's Delight, the record widely credited with turning hip-hop into a commercial genre for the first time. The one-hit wonder singer from 1973 became one of the most consequential record executives in the history of American music. Keep that name in your back pocket, because these countdowns almost always have someone whose real, lasting impact happened completely off the charts. Number 4. Wildflower by Skylark.
The world was about to fall in.
A Canadian band, barely known south of the border, releasing a ballad so gentle it very nearly got buried on its own album with no one noticing. Wildflower wasn't even released as a single in the United States at first. It only broke through because a single radio station in Detroit started playing it directly off the record, unprompted, and listeners would not stop calling in requesting it again. The lead vocal belongs to a singer named Donnie Gerard, and his performance is the emotional center of the record. But sitting quietly behind him, playing keyboards, is a name that would go on to define an entire era of pop music production. David Foster. Yes, that David Foster. The same producer who would go on to shape the sound of Whitney Houston, Céline Dion, Chicago, and dozens of other decade-defining vocalists across the next 30 years. His only hit as a performing artist, credited under his own name in a working band, happened right here, in a soul ballad that most casual listeners have completely forgotten ever existed. Number 3. Why Can't We Live Together by Timmy Thomas. One man, one organ, one incredibly primitive drum machine, among the very first ever used on a record that actually became a hit. Timmy Thomas built this entire track by himself, alone in a small Miami studio, reportedly inspired after watching a news broadcast about Vietnam War casualties and feeling like he had to say something about it, even in the middle of a soul record. It hit number 1 on the R&B chart. It reached number 3 on the pop chart nationally. It sold more than 2 million copies, and it's been labeled a one-hit wonder for 50 years running, even though Thomas quietly kept charting on R&B radio for well over a decade after this. The label stuck anyway, because nothing else he ever recorded broke through to the mainstream the way this one single moment did.
Tell me why.
And here's where the story jumps forward in time, in a way that still surprises people. In 2015, Drake sampled this exact record for Hotline Bling, one of the biggest songs of that entire year. An entirely new generation heard Timmy Thomas's voice through a modern hip-hop hit, with most of them having absolutely no idea where that haunting, minimal sound actually originated. A 1973 one-hit wonder, quietly powering a #1 hit 42 years later.
No more wars, no more wars, no more wars.
Number 2, Misdemeanor, by Foster Silvers.
What you gonna do?
He was 11 years old. Foster Silvers was the youngest member of a large musical family. His older siblings would go on to have a massive hit of their own a few years later, with Boogie Fever. But before any of that family success, an 11-year-old kid recorded a song about forgiving a partner's infidelity.
Get over it.
A heavy, grown-up subject, sung entirely in a child's voice, over a bass line so deep and so distinctive that it's still being sampled in hip-hop production to this day. It reached the top 10 on the R&B chart. It went silver in sales. And then, almost as quickly as it arrived, it was over.
What you gonna do? When I get better go.
Foster went on to join his family's group, rather than continue building a solo career of his own. One single, one chart run, and one of the most quietly influential bass lines to come out of soul music in the entire decade, still echoing through samples released decades after the original was recorded.
You got to get over it.
If you're still with us at this point, you already know something bigger is coming. Because our #1 pick isn't just a one-hit wonder, it's a one-hit wonder that got completely upstaged by its own parody, in one of the strangest chart stories of the entire 1970s.
You're what I need.
Number 1, Love Jones, by Brighter Side of Darkness. Calumet High School, Chicago's South Side, 1971. A group of teenagers forms a vocal act, the way a lot of soul groups did in this era, mostly for fun, mostly hoping something bigger would happen. Their manager brings in one more voice to round out the lineup, a 12-year-old boy named Daryl Lamont. Love Jones became a gold record. It hit number 16 on the national pop chart and climbed to number 3 on the soul singles chart. And the reason it worked was almost entirely Daryl Lamont's voice, a 12-year-old wailing through the chorus with an intensity and control that sounded like it belonged to someone twice his age.
But you see, I not only want you, baby.
It's genuinely one of the most striking vocal performances by a child on any soul record from this decade. And then, almost overnight, the song got hijacked by its own imitation. Comedy duo Cheech and Chong released a parody version called Basketball Jones, a track that somehow featured a former Beatle, George Harrison, and songwriter Carole King, performing on the same recording. And here's the part almost nobody remembers correctly. The parody actually charted one spot higher on the pop chart than the original song it was mocking. Think about that for a second. A 12-year-old poured everything into a genuinely great soul record, and within months, the joke version of his song was more famous than the real thing.
What, baby?
The follow-up single from Brighter Side of Darkness barely made a dent on the charts. The group disbanded within about a year. A legal dispute over rights to the group's name followed shortly after. And the song that gave a 12-year-old boy his one moment in the national spotlight went on to become more widely remembered as the punchline of someone else's joke than as a record in its own right.
You and daydream. I know I.
That's the story behind our #1 pick, and honestly, it's the perfect way to close out this entire list. 8 artists, 8 songs. A couple of them bent the technical definition of one-hit wonder slightly, and we told you exactly where and why. All 8 of them left behind exactly one record that still means something today. Whether it's sitting quietly inside a Drake sample, scoring a pivotal scene in a Tarantino film, or getting mistaken for a comedy record 50 years after the fact. If even one of these songs was new to you today, that's the entire reason this channel exists, pulling these stories back out of the vault before they disappear from memory completely. If you want the next one of these delivered straight to you, the subscribe button costs nothing and takes about 1 second. Thanks for sticking around all the way to the end of this one. We'll see you in the next countdown.
Did you miss me over the weekend?